Dive, dive, dive. Yes, thank you for joining us on Talk Dive Live. We are going live once again on Facebook to bring you some more scuba snacks. Why? Because they're free and you can double dip. Hey, you can triple dip. We don't care how many times you dip on our scuba snacks as long as you dip in. So make sure you start letting us know where you're calling in from or where you're signing in from. We've had some from as far over as Europe, Alaska. Let us know where you're calling in from. We'd love to hear from you. Go ahead and put stuff in the chat. We would be very happy to answer some questions. So let's get this going, guys. So we've got a wonderful panel today. We've got, once again, our lovable, huggable from now, I'm going to say 1,000 feet, instructor David. Say hi, David.
Hey everybody, it's good to see you again. We really appreciate being here and you watching us. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. And we've got the man whose name is so cool he doesn't need actually words. He just goes by his initials, AJ.
Hey guys, how are you doing?
And of course, we've got our Mr. Spiegel Grove himself, Captain Jim Wyatt, and course director. Glad to have you again.
Always glad to be here. Thank you. Thank you guys for joining in.
Looks like we've got a Mike Meisner from SoCal. Hey, good to see you. He was one of my very first IDC candidates here about 8 years ago. Yes, and there's a story about a keg and a refrigerator, but I'm not going to go into that right now because today we're going to talk about rescue. We're going to talk about the type of people that take the rescue. We're going to talk about the course itself. We're going to talk about some of the scenarios, and we're going to talk about, make sure you cough into your elbow, some cool reasons to talk about rescue. So, David, while I choke here, why don't you start us off?
Okay, happy to. I think I'll start off by talking about who might take rescue and why. Certainly, if you have a goal of achieving the Master Scuba Diver certification, rescue is along with 5 specialties and of course advanced. Those are the requirements. If you're thinking about going pro, rescue comes before Dive Master and the IDC. But I would suggest that rescue is for everybody who wants to become a better diver and a more aware diver and a more helpful diver, because as you'll hear as we talk about some of the scenarios that you do in rescue, it's challenging, it's rewarding, but also you know that if your buddy gets into trouble or someone else, you might not even know them, if they get into trouble, you know exactly what to do. And it's really sort of an awesome thing to be able to look out for other people, not just yourself.
Absolutely. Sorry, I think I got one of those proverbial frogs in my throat. At least I can do the frog kick, so I'm going to try and kick that out. But yes, as David said, it is a wonderful next step. So that you can not only learn how to manage your own problems and risks, but those of others. And actually, little known fact, if you're doing it in the pool, you can start your rescue course immediately after you're doing your open water course. Yes, you can actually start doing the 10 skills, practicing those in the pool before you even start your rescue course or your advanced course, because adventure diver is actually the prerequisite as long as you have the navigation dive as one of your adventure dives. AJ, why don't you tell us a little bit about your experience with the course itself?
Honestly, it's just a super fun and fulfilling course. The spatial awareness that you'll gain from it, it's immeasurable. The course itself, it's a lot of fun teaching. It's a lot of fun, even at the student level, just getting the certification, the confidence that you'll get through the program. It's amazing. It's a lot of fun.
So you find as a diver, it actually helped build your confidence as being a better diver, AJ?
Well, absolutely. I also felt that I was a better asset at any dive site that I might be at, being able to apply the stuff that I learned, first aid wise, even, or if there would have been a diving incident, being able to know how to handle the situations uh, helps significantly.
Wonderful, excellent. So, Jim, let me ask you: when teaching the actual rescue course, what is maybe one of your one or two favorite skills that you do in order to prep them for the two scenarios that later they have to be able to do with all 10 skills?
Well, there are a lot of skills that we do to prep students with. Um, so I guess my favorite skill is a psychological skill where we are teaching divers how to notice when other divers are not feeling 100% confident, to be able to evaluate their emotions and evaluate whether or not they're having a good time or whether or not they're struggling for some reason or the other. Then they could be struggling on the surface because of a weight issue or because they're cold, or they could be struggling underwater because they're afraid of something. I mean, these scenarios rarely happen in real life, so we don't worry too much about them in our day to day diving, but we do have those tools on our tool belt to be able to help with a diver that starts to have some sort of an issue, whether it be on the surface or underwater, and being able to spot those things before they occur and preventing them is very valuable. It's just like the old saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And for those of you that are just chiming in, we are here on Talk Dive Live. Thank you. Goeiedag Gerre, goed om je te zien. Heel goed om je te zien. En prettige Koningsdag. I just said, very good to see you to a Dutch friend of mine out there, because today is King's birthday. Yes, I did not wear the colors, but Captain Jim did. He's got the orange color floating. So thank you there. We've also got some IDC staff people in the house. So thank you all. Go ahead, let us know where you're calling from or where you're signing in from. Also, go ahead and drop those questions in our chat. And if you joined us for our Project Aware last Saturday, say hello. And if you're going to join us for the Project Aware that we've got coming up on Wednesday, let us know about that as well. We had a wonderful time, had a great turnout. But today we're talking about rescue. And Captain Jim said one of the most important things, which was basically to do a dry rescue before the problem happens in itself, to people watch, to see if you can notice if the loud person, I might resemble that remark, is quiet, or if the quiet person is suddenly loud. Or here, this is my impersonation of passive panic. It's pretty good, huh? I've been working on that. Thank you very much. So speaking of passive panic, there's always one of you guys in the audience. Thank you for that laughter. I appreciate that. It really helped. It warms my heart. So speaking of passive panic, David, can you talk to us a little bit about some of the actual skills that we're going to be doing in the rescue course?
Yes, absolutely. So actually, you mentioned just now panic, and we actually talk about sort of two stages of a diver in the water who needs assistance. One is a tired diver. They're not panicked yet, although they could turn into a panic diver. And one is a panic diver, and that could be on the surface or underwater. So those are four skills right there: dealing with a tired diver on the surface, underwater, dealing with a panic diver on the surface and underwater. Those four skills. And each one requires a different type of response. Obviously, if you're underwater, you can't actually talk to the person. Up on the surface, we try to talk them down. Underwater, we might try to sort of make eye contact and help them get their breathing under control. Sometimes, though, you can't, and then you need to know what to do to make sure that you're getting the panic diver under control. On the surface, you might have to get their BC filled because they're not hearing that they need to do that. Underwater, you really have to be aware somebody might try to bolt when they're in panic mode, because you just lose all your training when you're in panic mode. And you really have to sort of know how to stop that person from bolting, or try to slow them at least if possible. So those 4 skills are sort of core. And as Jim and Ross were saying, we want to try to catch that before those happen. But if it does happen, you've gone through the training a number of times in these skills, and then at the scenarios at the end, to know how to deal with that instantly.
Excellent. Yes. And as a matter of fact, to go even further with the panic diver and the tire diver, if there's a full-blown panic diver at the surface, he's pretty soon going to turn into a tire diver. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Oh, you see him, huh? Linky. Actually, this is Linky's twin. Linky went for a dive today because he can. So this is his twin, Linky. Linky. The whole family is named Linky. But Linky wanted me to remind everybody that there are actually 2 things that you can link to the rescue course. Most specifically, the rescue management plan, right? The emergency management plan, which everybody has to do during their rescue course. And then you can actually utilize that same plan when you go further and become a dive master as your emergency medical plan. The other one is the emergency O2 provider. That's the emergency oxygen provider. That actually constitutes as rescue exercise number 9. If you've actually taken that course, and here at Rainbow Reef, we make that a part of all of our rescue courses, because with that, you can link that directly to the rescue course, which constitutes, like I said, as rescue exercise number 9. And that way, not only will you be certified as an emergency O2 provider, but you've gone that much closer to completing your rescue course. Isn't that right? Thank you. I always need help from Linky. Captain Jim, can you tell us, why is emergency oxygen one of the most important things in a rescue?
Well, when we have to rescue someone, if they've had any possibility of an overexpansion injury, decompression sickness, it's long known that oxygen on the surface is never going to hurt anybody. We know that for a fact. But in the event they have an overexpansion injury, or they have decompression sickness type 1 or type 2, oxygen therapy is always good therapy, because it reduces the partial pressure of nitrogen in the system, in the bloodstream, and it helps get rid of nitrogen quicker. And so even if you give someone oxygen and they didn't really need it, you haven't hurt them, and you don't always know whether they need it or not. So go ahead and give it to them anyway.
That's very wise.
Too,
Emma. I'm glad you mentioned that. I saw that and wanted to make sure you saw that, Emma. Yes, Captain Jim, he feels it from the heart. Yes. So yes, in fact, oxygen. It's not that it's going to help, but it will not hurt. And it does help make people feel better. The other thing is, don't forget, as part of the rescue course, an exit requirement. In other words, it doesn't have to be during the course or before the course, but you do have to be certified as emergency first response or primary and secondary care as an exit requirement. And that has a requirement of a refresher every 2 years. So although your rescue certification does not run out, your emergency first response certification or accreditations will. So you do need to do a refresher every 2 years, and keep that in mind. Now, AJ, if we can go back to you, and let's talk about some of the scenarios, and maybe something that you would set up as a scenario, because of course the rescue, there's no right or wrong way to do something. it's just about acting. It's about doing something. But at the same time, it's about making sure that you are safe first. Always better to do a dry rescue if you can than just jump in and then suddenly there are two people that need to be rescued. But in your training, either as an instructor or as a student, what have you found, or what was one of the most useful skills that you have been able to bring to your instructorial career?
That is a good question. Rescue skills that I've been able to use, like David mentioned earlier, gaining control in a situation when somebody is panicking underwater has been a big help.
So might that be like the approach? Would that be like the approach, the way that you go up to them?
Yes, very much so. You always want to approach in such a way. First, you're going to assess the situation and see, are they panicked or are they responsive? Being able to distinguish the two, whether they are responsive or non-responsive, definitely a key point there. And at that point, you need to make the decision, okay, well, they're not responding, so I don't know if there's an actual issue. Just remembering to always approach in such a way as David mentioned, not to become a second victim, or you even mentioned that. So definitely approaching from underneath and behind is a good option. You can circle around them, because a lot of times they may not even be visually seeing you in their panicked moments. Definitely practice these things, and you'll get tons and tons and tons of practice with this stuff, with scene assessment and everything, while going through your rescue course. And one of the things, there was one other student that went through rescue with me in my course. His name was Kenneth Hernandez. And I remember shortly before I did my IDC, he actually asked me to go to the local quarry where we lived and practice rescue skills and everything. And, remembering to practice these things and keep them fresh, or doing dry rescues is always a good thing. That way it's in your muscle memory. You're not having to think as much about it in the moment, and you can just go into exercising the training that you've already received.
Excellent. That's actually excellent advice. Keeping up with your training so that when it is called upon, you can actually do something. Because again, more often than not, the fact of not doing something is actually worse than trying to do something to actually make it better. The other one is to consider, what is it? And I'd like each of you, and I'd like all of you out there to think about the basic just steps that we do every time we dive that we can actually fix or help at a rescue situation before they even happen. For instance, one of the most commonly seen in my career of problems is at the surface, where people have forgotten to actually plug in their low pressure inflator hose. So they jump in the surf, they do their giant stride because they didn't do what? Their buddy check, because they didn't do what? The BWRAFF. So they jump in, they do the giant stride, they go to inflate, and they've probably overweighted themselves anyway because it's been a little while since they've dived, which means they're not even thinking very well. And then suddenly they can't inflate because it's not inflated or it's not connected. They don't even think to try to orally inflate because now they're panicking because they're overweighted. They're in a little bit of a chop. They're trying to get the tagline, and now we've got a panicked diver. This is one of the most easily fixable problems just by doing a buddy check. Just by taking that extra minute and maybe giving a little puff to your BCD before you jump in the water. To heaven forfend, ask one of your dive buddies or ask the dive guide or somebody to just check you out before you go. Make sure that everything matches, because of course the most important thing in scuba is that your gear all matches. It's the same color, right? Yes. But I'd like all of you, and of course our panel as well, but let us know, what are some things that you think could be easily fixed before anybody even jumps in the water, to fix a rescue before it happens? David, what about you?
Yeah, actually, this is a true story from not too long ago. So it's really important for experienced divers to not sort of rest on their laurels too much and make sure that you're going through all the proper procedures. And that also includes making sure you know your new dive gear. We had a very experienced diver on the boat recently. She happened to have had a new regulator. She had used it before, but for some reason, the dial that allows the air to either come through easier or harder, depending on what type of dive conditions that you're in, was sort of all the way towards the more closed side, way too much. And she went in and she started diving and found that she was having a really hard time breathing. And she came up and she wasn't panicked because she was experienced and she hadn't gone too far, but we brought her back up and she said, I don't know why I'm having such a hard time breathing. Like, this has never happened to me. And I suggested to her that maybe she just needed to fiddle with her regulator, and that's all it was. But that's something that she could easily have checked on the boat, especially, again, because it was a fairly new regulator, so she didn't completely understand everything about it yet. And then she went on her second dive and had a great time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. As a matter of fact, what does this look like? Somebody who's
Your
forgotten
air's
to
off?
turn on their air, right? Dan Dyer's just mentioned that. Exactly, Dan. That's one of the best ones. You jump in and you get the twin cheek pucker. Yeah, not a fan of that. How about yourself, Jim? What would you say would be something that is easily handleable at the surface before the rescue even has to happen?
Well, we see periodically divers that want to just jump in the water without their fins on. And that may be okay under flat calm conditions with zero current. But if a diver jumps in the water when it's a little choppy and there's a current moving them away from the boat, then that can create a stressful situation for that diver, and it could escalate into a panic situation on the surface. And that's just a simple solution. Put your gear on before you enter the water, and do your buddy check before you enter the water. Several people mentioned turn your air on. I mean, we've seen this a number of times as well. And Rainbow Reef, our boat crew, particularly our captain and our first mate, part of our job is to ensure that each diver's air is in fact turned on before they jump into the water. And we rarely, if ever, allow someone to jump in the water without their fins on.
Excellent advice. This is some sound advice from all. Just some basic things that can make a difference between a panic diver and just here, let me get this for you. So yes, guys, if you're just chiming in, we've been talking about the rescue course, who should be taking it, the things that we can link to it. Of course, that's the Emergency O2, and you can utilize the emergency management plan to move toward further. The other thing is we talk about in the rescue course, something that we do in the rescue and the dive master and the IDC, for those of you that are looking at doing the instructor course, is we are going to be doing the unconscious diver at the surface, and we do that in all of our courses because it is so imperative that, like AJ said, we simply get these things into our bodies so that we're not thinking about the steps. We just know how to do them. There is no right, there is no wrong way. As long as you do what you're trained to do, and you think about the safety of both yourself and the victim, that's the most important thing about a rescue course. So I just want to give a couple reminders before we go and talk couple more scuba snacks to start thinking about some dive sites, guys, or some dives. Please go ahead, sign in. Let us know where you're hailing in from. We like to try and compile this information so that we can get some more information to you that might be even area specific. If you didn't join us for the Project Aware on Saturday, we had a huge turnout, almost 100 people for a Project Aware. Then they all got certified, had a wonderful time on Zoom. We're going to be doing that again on Wednesday afternoon at 2 p.m. So please join Shane and I. Shane and I are part of the conservational team here as well. And also, something, we will be going live this Saturday with some raffles and some gear sales sponsored by divegeardepot.com. That's divegeardepot.com. Yes, that's our very own online. Yes, there's going to be more coming about that. So join us for that. Make sure you do. All right, now for that, let's get that scuba dip ready so we can talk scuba snacks. AJ, would you like to share one of your more recent or more memorable moments underwater? Doesn't have to be rescue oriented, just something you can share with us. And also everybody out there, let us know. Give us an idea. Send us some photos. Send us some scuba love, some scuba snacks. But AJ, what's your scuba snack you'd like to share with us?
Actually, my favorite, most recent memory diving, conservation wise, I was able to actually assist a shark in need, one of the nurse sharks on one of the dive sites over on Molasses Reef. I happened to notice there was a hook coming out just next to its pectoral fin. It had got snagged. Some fishermen had pulled it up, cut the line, left the hook in place, and I was able to actually pull the line out and get him cleared and unfouled. So that was a really neat experience that I got to have just recently.
Wow. That's fantastic. You're our very own Christina Zanato. That's excellent. Always good to be helping out the underwater world. The other thing is we've got a Project Aware, Shark Aware specialty that can show you about these types of things and help with that kind of stuff. David, what have you got for a scuba snack for us today?
So I've said many times on this show that it's hard to say about a particular favorite dive site because any dive is potentially awesome. And I'd like to prove that point today by talking about Grecian Rocks, which is one of our sites that's up to the north. It's not part of French or Molasses. And if you had asked me, is Grecian Rocks one of my favorite dive sites? I would probably say no, it really isn't. And yet, at the same time, my last dive on Grecian Rocks was extraordinary. Every kind of fish that I love, like scrawled filefish, juvenile French angelfish, lots of trunkfish, cowfish, like all these really cool fish that I'm always out looking out for. They were all there for me, and I was able to point them out to my divers. And it just goes to show you that all dive sites are great because you can see all this cool stuff.
Yes, you absolutely. As a matter of fact, I've got a scuba snack from when I was assisting in a rescue course because I was on a rebreather. So I said, why don't you let me be the unconscious diver underwater, since it's no fair when you're doing a rescue course and you can see the bubbles, you know where they are, right? Well, I was on a rebreather, so they couldn't find me that easy. The problem is that I got myself in a little area and I started watching these cleaner crabs going at it. It was hypnotic to watch them. It was phenomenal. And I forgot about the fact that I was part of this course until the person that was searching for me grabbed my leg. At which point at which point I screamed very loud and probably scared even the little crabs. So yes, be careful what you wish for. So yeah, I definitely. It's a good thing we can all pee in our wetsuits, right? So, Jim, what about yourself?
Well, there's a couple of things I'd like to say. First off, I'd like to say a little something else about the rescue diver course. When you think about it, all the other classes you take before rescue, open water, advanced open water, some of the specialties, you're concentrating on yourself and improving your skills and that sort of thing. When you take the rescue course, that's the first step you take in expanding your sphere of awareness, not only from yourself, but to other people. And that's part of what makes you a better diver. psychologically, not to mention the skills you learn. But as far as the dive site goes, one of my favorites is a drift dive over on Conch Wall. We can drop in the water there and hit about 50 feet of water, and it drops down to 90 feet on a slope. And one of the last ones I did, we were zooming along, and a bunch of eagle ray, a school of eagle rays, about 15 of them swam by and swam with us as we were passing over this huge field of barrel sponges. I have that vision in my brain, and I'll never lose that vision. It was so cool, and I'd like to go do that again tomorrow.
Yes, yes. From your mouth to Neptune's ears, we would all love to go do that tomorrow. Absolutely. That's a wonderful scuba snack. Well, again, thank you, every one of you, for joining us for our Talk Dive Live, where we get to host a little party where you get to gorge on scuba snacks. Today we were talking about the rescue course, not just what it entails, but also, as Jim was saying, who can actually take it, the people that are starting to look around and see that there are other actual divers in the water with them, and how they can help to assist with things. So we talked about some linking, some other specialties, but I think the main theme is it's one of the funnest courses you'll ever do. And also, in AJ's words, one of the most important and one of the most rewarding. So thank you very much for joining us. Don't forget about our Project Aware on Wednesday and our live from the shop sale on Saturday. More on that later. For now, I'd like to say dive, dive, dive from us here at Rainbow Reef. Thank you for joining us. It's been a pleasure to share our snacks. Please come back. Drop a note of where you are, who you are, and let's talk to you soon. So in the meantime, dive, 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 guys.
Thanks everybody. For joining. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you, guys.